Hey, think of me, babe, whenever, whenever you have any love problems, everybody.
My weekly
welcome-
visit with Captain and Tennille.
Exactly. I know. Hey, welcome to Makeup or Breakup. TGIT. Thank God it's Tuesday. We get to hear all about love, what's right, what's not. And I think we are going to continue on narcissism today just because.
So much fun.
Right?
And it's such a wealth of a subject.
Exactly. Hey, I had something strange happen. Some couple of people who watched the podcast went to my website and they were emailing me off of it, but they also were trying to watch some videos on my website, and they said that they're disabled, which is true. I don't know why they'd be disabled.
On your website?
On my website,
okay.
Which granted is a WordPress website, so it's about as safe as a a hairnet in the rain, but
yeah, that's something to talk to your webmaster about.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there.
The Coach Judith Facebook page has the complete library of all the episodes of Makeup or Breakup on there, so you can find them all there.
That's right. Who doesn't want to hang out here in Facebook land?
No, hey, yesterday it was a bit of a hassle with the widespread outages.
What was the deal with all that? I just heard about it late last night. I saw something, and this morning I saw something, but I wasn't sure what was going on.
Well, it happened. It happened right around 11:30. I know because I was on the air at the time with another podcast, and there were some widespread outages. You just literally could not get into Facebook, and I guess the problems extended to Instagram as well.
I heard that.
And WhatsApp, I think, and it was a considerable period of time. It was mid-afternoon or even later before it came back. I haven't read yet what the problem was, but
right.
There was
what are you thinking? Like a major hack of some sort? I mean,
I don't think it was a hack, but who knows? I mean, it's incredibly complex what's going on with platforms like Facebook and things like that. So. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised things don't happen more often than they do, but it's interesting that people have to kind of turn and look at themselves without Facebook or Instagram for a few hours in a day.
Right. I know a lot of people I was talking to this morning were like, I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And then I thought about this and then I thought about that. And I'm like, wow, that's like, you're really like.
Yeah. And even I don't like to think I'm like that, but Facebook, Instagram are a big part of our lives right now. It's the way we connect with people. Largely, it fights for our attention. It fills our time for us a little bit. So I'm sure it affected just about everybody to certain degrees, hopefully not to a panic degree, but it's social media is a big part of who we are and what our lives are now.
Right. Well, and most people that are watching this podcast are watching it on Facebook.
Yeah.
So very interesting that happened.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be looking forward to why it happened.
It's the Ghost Hunter show that I do, and all kinds of weird things happen while I'm on the air with him anyway, so might have had something to do with that.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about the dysfunctionality of narcissism and the fact that, as we have talked about in the last several weeks, if you look at the archived shows, which I highly recommend, for the last couple of weeks we've been talking about narcissism and in particular what it is, but then we're going to get into some of the guidelines in this book that I've been referencing on how do you heal from being with a narcissist after you finally get out of their tangled web, right?
Yep.
And last night I was thinking I would talk about as a launching point that I would start the show today by talking about healthy things that I think people should be looking for. So in other words, we're often talking about what's a yellow flag, what's a flashing yellow flag, and for God's sakes, what's a red flag?
Yep.
Right. I mean, that's even worse when you're like, well, there were red flags, but
yeah, exactly.
I didn't look at them. More than likely, someone says there were red flags. I didn't want to look at them.
Right.
Right. And we all know what that's about because you didn't want to be alone.
Well, with a narcissist at the beginning, there's that adoration, which covers up a lot of these red flags. And usually the conversation is, well, he's done this, but by the same token, God, he adores me, and when times are good, they're really good. That's the big thing when you're in the web of a narcissist. You say, God, it's hell a lot of the time, but boy, when it's good, it's good.
Right. They hook you on the 20%.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
it's like an 80-20 or an 8 or a 90-10.
Yep.
You know, you crave the 10% that, you know, the loving, caring, allegedly loving, caring person that you thought you knew at the beginning of the relationship that waxed and waned. But
for me, I'm sure this happens to a lot of people. For me, it was a situation of, all right, we're just in this storm right now. You know,
right.
Things get better when we get through the storm. There's a lot of things pressing on us. You know, she's got a lot of pressures. You know, you start rationalizing her behavior on some of the stuff in her life that is because she's a narcissist and she's messed it up. She's having battles with people who have come to grips with her narcissism and have, you know, tried to break away from her or whatever, whether it be employers or coworkers or whatever. They're dealing with a lot of stuff, but they're dealing with a lot of stuff because they create a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting because having been with one or two people who I'm pretty sure were a narcissist, when you go to like...
I tell you this story because it's so typically narcissistic.
Yeah, go ahead. It's good. Go. Then I can drink.
With an ex-girlfriend, it was kind of interesting. She had a situation with her boss, and it came down to the boss. It was a repeated lack of procedure, and the boss said, "You're not getting this bonus because of it." And he was trying to kind of point out to her that that she wasn't doing what she should be doing, so she's not going to get the bonus. And she enlisted me in this campaign to get the bonus. And I remember going through different letters and things like this and trying to find different ways to word it so she would get the bonus. And I remember asking her at one time, I said, "What's more important to you, getting the bonus or being right?" And she said, "Oh, being right." And I go, "Yeah, then why are we doing this?" Because you're not right. That's the problem. In other words, yeah, my strategy to her was, I said, "Okay, you say I understand where I've fallen short on these procedures. I appreciate it, but I really would like to get the bonus, and I'll do better. I'll do better going forward." That was basically my suggested strategy to her because she was in the wrong. But I remember asking the question. I remember being stunned by the answer. What's more important, getting the bonus or being right? I'd rather be right. Okay. You know, and that's a narcissist, right? That's a narcissist behavior right there. I don't think she was one, but that's a narcissistic, that's on the spectrum. That's the type of thing that a narcissist will do because she didn't want to give up her self-image with her boss of being wrong.
Yeah. But the interesting part about that is the amount of energy and effort and the storm that they bring you into to help them because you're part of their life. It's like now you're pulled into the drama is really what it is, right?
Yep.
It's the drama of proving that they're right and why they should get the bonus, for example, when a boss has every right to say, "You know what? I've told you 3 times, 3 strikes, you're out."
Yep. And all he wanted was for her to understand what was lacking in the way she was going about these things.
Right.
And that's all it would have taken would have been an acknowledgement. "Oh, geez, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I let you down in those things. You know, I'll be better going forward." He would have given her the bonus. He would have. But it turned into a fight on principle.
Right. And a lot of times with a narcissist, you know, and I actually, you know, the more I'm looking at the list, I think my father was one. And like he could never be accused of being wrong or doing something incorrectly or going the wrong way. Like, pretty sure we're going west right now when we're trying to go to Cambridge or whatever it is, right? It's like pretty sure, like even as a kid, I was like, wow, that's an interesting thing to watch. And, you know, the dance that my mom would get into because she already knew, you know, when people would say, you know, like, why did she stay? Why did she give up? Why didn't she just walk? You know, all these different things. It's like, yeah, because you're trying to maneuver your life when you've got, you know, at that point, you know, 3 kids.
Yep.
Right. And no job. Right. And a husband that's in sales. So he can automatically pretend that he didn't get his bonuses and things. But it is interesting because when I think back to it, and you know, when I have clients that are in difficult situations, I never say to them something like, you know, like I never shame them. I might say, well, everybody has different reasons for staying and none of them is wrong. You know, all of them they're valid because everybody's got their own story. So I ask them, you know, what do you think kept you in it? What was it? What were the positive things? Because I try to focus on that. Like, what were the positive things that kept you in it? Because then that helps somebody not feel as guilty about the fact that their friends are like, what the hell? You should have left them 15 years ago, right?
That's brilliant, though, because the key to healing from a narcissistic counter is to ask that question of why you participated. What did it feel for you? Because a lot of times the damage is done with a narcissist by trying to figure them out and trying to accommodate them and trying to figure out what they want, what they need, and how to supply it to them. When you're trying to heal from it, the big question is, what did that fulfill for me that I stayed in this? Because again, as we've talked about over and over, you aren't with a narcissist by choice, by chance.
Yeah.
You were chosen by the narcissist, maybe not consciously. They're just very skilled at picking people who will accommodate them for a long period of time. And the reason you did it, the reason you put up with all this pain, it fulfilled some kind of need in you. And exploring that is the beginning to the healing part. Why did I stay? Why did I get involved with this narcissist? Why did I stay with this narcissist when things were clear? You answer those questions, and you're well on your way to healing at that point.
Well, yeah, because then you can take it further and say, okay, so you married them for these reasons, which were usually positive presenting reasons, at least at the beginning.
Yep.
And then let's talk about the deterioration of that relationship. And during those years of the deterioration, I get it. At first it's small things that are starting to make you feel uncomfortable. But when you started to see those more and more, and it was a pattern, what was it that, sort of put you in that I'm staying put, putting yourself in staying put. And really, like you said, thinking about that, because it's not necessarily right or wrong, but like you said, it sheds light on your outlook, your outlook on self-esteem and your outlook on marriage or relationships. So some people, let's be honest, there's a lot of people, even today, they're still out there, which is great. We all hate divorce. So they're anti-divorce, but they take it to an extreme where it's like, no matter what goes on, I'm going to die on the hill and I'm not going to be the one that files. And it's like, okay, so like, who is that helping that you're going to die on the hill and not be the one that files?
That's rationalization to protect themselves.
Right. Exactly.
That's rationalizing a decision to stay, when the decision to stay is fear of the unknown and fear of what happens afterwards. But you rationalize it by saying, no, this is a principle thing. I got married. I'm sticking with this. I'm ride or die. That type of person. But the defining line in healing from a narcissist is for a lot of this time, certainly throughout the whole relationship and probably a long time after the relationship, you're trying to figure out what they needed. Why did they do what they did? Right. It's the wrong question. Why did you do what you did? That's when that question changes, that's when you're on the path to healing. Right.
Well, it's sort of like, it'd be like, remember the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest?
Vaguely, yeah.
Yeah. All right. It's one of my favorite movies. It really is. And it's sadly a pretty good portrayal of what the, psych wards and psych hospitals used to be like, especially when, oh God, what's that procedure when they electric shock?
Electric shock therapy. Yeah.
Yeah. When they portray that kind of stuff, once they had that, like, it was a game changer for those psych hospitals and the psych departments, in the hospitals, because you've got all these people that going around and, they're distressed, especially because when you take someone that has serious mental health issues, you put them into a white gown, right? You strip them of their clothing and their environment. In my opinion, obviously they're going to get worse, right?
Yep.
And it was always such a horrible, stark hospital situation. But if you were to walk in there and ask each of those people, why do you hit your head on the wall all day? Or why do you talk to yourself all day? Or why do you sit in a rocking chair and do this all day? Or why do you have a blank stare and not say anything? Well, they're mentally ill. They've got, they're short circuiting somewhere, and they're not able to answer those questions. And it's the same thing with a narcissist, Lou. It is a mental health issue. It's a personality disorder. And I feel like you and I have mentioned that as a thread, but we've never really focused heavily on it. And I think it's important to say it right up front. Even if people turn this off after, 20 minutes, they'll have heard this. It is a personality disorder. It is a disorder. Like, it's not order. It's disorder, and it's a malfunctioning of the brain. And every psychiatrist out there who's studied this and that's an expert in it will tell you, if it's determined that your partner is a narcissist, and they check off 55% of the checklist, which we'll go over again, just in case those of you missed it last week. When you're dealing with someone, even if it's not your girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, it could be like, God forbid, your parent could be a narcissist, your boss could be a narcissist.
Sure.
Like, let's pretend your girlfriend was right and she didn't have the I've always got to be right. If she were dealing with a narcissist who happens to have a managerial position, she ain't never going to win. It ain't happening.
Right.
Like, those are the worst bosses. And it's funny when you think of personalities, Lou, we're usually talking about relationships because this is a show about love, relationships. But, it's kind of like, if you understand narcissism and you understand the, whatever it is, 12 or 13 points, and you're having difficulties with like one neighbor, it could just be, he's not just a jackass. He's actually, or she, the one that like has to put the tree 2 inches into your yard just because, right? Just because they know the roots are going to grow and they don't want them growing too far into their own yard. Think about it, Lou. Those people could be a narcissist.
Yep.
Like when people talk about, so I just threw like my dog's poop over the fence onto my neighbor's yard because I'm trying to get back at them for like,
right.
When they get up on a Saturday morning with the jackhammer or whatever they're doing, mowing their lawn at 6:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
The reality is, they could be a total jerk, but what might be behind that motivation or insensitivity is that they truly are a narcissist. That's the mind-blowing part. And that's the part that, if you can determine that.
I think they're a situational narcissist too.
Okay, what do you mean?
Like, I think it's part of an alter ego personality. In other words, a person might be a different person at home than they are at work. They might show a lot of narcissist tendencies at work, and or in given situations, or in that particular fight with your neighbor or something like that. But otherwise, they're not that way at work or something. I think there are people whose that personality trait is let loose in certain situations, but not in other situations. I want to go back to your example about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and an insane asylum, and how narcissism is a disorder, to illustrate the point, because you sit there with a narcissist and you're asking all the time, why are they doing what they're doing? And you're trying to figure out what they're doing and trying to respond. But if you were in an asylum and you were talking to somebody or involved in a relationship with somebody who was banging their head against the wall, you wouldn't spend a lot of time trying to figure out why they're banging their heads against the wall. You would just try to deal with it. And you certainly wouldn't assume it as your own problem. Right? But with a narcissist, you ask why they're doing what they're doing, and you tend to assume it's because you're not good enough. Right? And that's one of the personality traits of somebody that narcissists seek out. That's something you have to address in yourself. You wouldn't be wondering, that person's banging their head against the wall because I'm not good enough. You wouldn't be taking that on in your own personality struggles.
Right.
But with a narcissist, you tend to do it.
Right. And one of the main messages in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is that the inmates are running the asylum.
Yeah.
So the theory is that a lot of the people inside of those institutions, including, the portrayal, right, they're not as crazy as people think. They were just housed there.
Yeah.
Right. And so the theme really says, are the crazy people really in here locked up, or are they walking around out in society?
Yeah.
Right. And truthfully, most of the craziest people we've ever known, we've known them because they're walking around in society.
Yeah.
They're not in a committed institution.
Yeah. The only thing more aggravating than craziness is stealth craziness. People who are out in society, hiding it. And then the narcissist, that's a stealth crazy. Again, it's a mental disorder, but it's very stealthy. You don't understand it until you're very involved in it. And then, then you're emotionally involved, and that's where things get complicated. Right.
Yeah. It's interesting because several years ago when I was running divorce care down in Lexington, a woman came through it, and she was talking about her marriage that she had finally been able to get out of. The guy was very abusive, mostly verbally and emotionally. But it got physical at the end because, as I always say, verbal abuse will always lead to physical abuse at some point.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be in the first 6 months. It may not even be in the first 5 years. But over time, the person will eventually get more and more agitated because, of course, you're playing a part in that, in the sense that you are sort of an enabler. You're still in the relationship and they're still verbally assaulting you, right? So eventually it does become physical. But in her case, she found out like a couple of years after she separated and was going through the divorce, she found out from her kids who were like, I don't know, 4th grade, early high school, and college. She found out from her kids that, oh yeah, Mom, Dad used to say things about you behind your back all the time.
Yeah.
And she's like, really? Oh my, like what? Because she thought it was just, he's just this hateful man, right?
Right.
So one of the stories, which will really blow your mind, it's just like pathetic. It's sick, especially the fact that the kids, they remembered these things. And now as older kids, they're feeling guilty about it because it's like it's hitting them all of a sudden. Like, oh my God, that was a terrible thing to do to Mom, right?
Yeah.
And, meanwhile, she sort of kept her head up and didn't say all the terrible things about him to them, right? Which, of course, allows the crazy person to get away with looking like Mr. Perfect.
Right.
So they were saying when we would often be out with Dad in the car, like going to the grocery store or something like that, he would say, kids, watch this. Let's mess with Mom. Like as a joke. And they're like, oh, okay, and they actually felt really guilty for a while. I think they all did some serious couch time because as kids, they thought, oh, Dad's playing a prank on Mom. But really what they saw as older kids is this is really mean. It's kind of like, putting a mouse in a box.
Yeah, it's manipulation.
It's manipulation and it's torture, really. It's emotional torture.
Mm-hmm.
And it's abusive. So what he would do is he would put his phone on, speaker in the car and dial the house. And she'd answer the phone and he'd be like, hey, I'm out with the kids. We're going to grab the milk and whatever, get the gas for the car, whatever. So we were thinking, how about if we have, spaghetti and meatballs tonight?
Yeah.
So that means she's putting meatballs together, right?
Yeah.
She would put this whole meal together for them and they would come in like an hour and a half later. And he'd be like, so he'd get off the phone and he'd go, guys, this is hilarious. So Mom's going to be making spaghetti and meatballs, but wouldn't you guys rather have Chinese food tonight? Well, what kid's going to say no to like takeout? God. Yeah, that sounds great, Dad.
Yeah.
All right. So you know what? We're going to go buy Chinese food, but it's going to be a surprise. So he's so sick, he would make these kids think that this was a funny prank and that it would be a happy surprise for Mom.
Right.
We're going to surprise her and we're actually just going to go get Chinese food. And that's like a horrible thing. And so they would show up at home with the Chinese food and she'd be sitting there after slaving over making this guy like his homemade meal because they were in this dysfunctional long-term marriage. Even though the interesting part about that is he almost always cooked because he wanted it to be a certain way and he didn't feel like she could cook well enough, which is weird, right? He also had a full-time job. And he also would insist on making all the cool appetizers and cocktails when they'd have friends or neighbors over. So that true narcissist, but also like a psychopath. So that he would be the center of attention when they all came over. He could be like, oh, I made that, twisty pastry thing, Yeah. Crazy, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I love cooking and stuff, but I'm more than happy if someone wants to come in and say, like, if my husband says, well, why don't I just barbecue? It's easier. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
I am fine with that. Right. Just get some good steak tips for me and I'm good,
It seems low level and like you said, prankish and things like that. But I mean, God, it's such intense. I don't think abuse is too strong a word. I really don't think
it's not. And he would do it all the time, Lou. This was one of his things that he thought was fun.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's like putting a mouse in a shoebox and then poking it all the time because you just think it's funny. It's like, nah, that's not funny. That's like really sick.
And a lot of time, and that was intent, right?
Right. Yep.
And a lot of times, even with narcissists, it's not the abuse is not necessarily their intent. It's just kind of something that they need and they rationalize it. But this guy had malicious intent and followed through on it.
Right. So he had that malicious intent. He was abusive, but also more than happy to keep her around because, hey, she had his kids. She cooked and cleaned and, all that. But, man, it was like crazy town, But I'm going to go over those. I'm not going to read all the descriptions, but I'm going to remind everybody that with narcissism, then we're going to move on a little bit. It is all about them. I mean, that is the key theme. And what a narcissist will show you. How do you tell if they're a narcissist? According to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, say that 3 times fast.
All right. Yeah. No, I don't think I will.
Yeah. Which psychotherapists use as a guide. The person that we think is the narcissist needs only 55%. So just over 50% of the identified characteristics to be considered narcissistic.
Okay.
And this is the list, and I'm not going to go into the details because they sort of describe themselves. Last week, I did go into the details. Superiority and entitlement. Okay. Well, that one actually, what they're talking about is that there's a definite hierarchy with the narcissist at the top, which is the only place that he or she feels safe. They have to be the best. They have to be the most right, and they have to be the most competent. And everything has to be done their way. They have their own everything.
And they have to be told that constantly. Yeah.
Yeah. And they control everyone too. They control the people. The second one is high need for attention and validation.
Yep.
The third one is perfectionism. Narcissists have an extremely high need for everything to be perfect. They believe they should be perfect. You should be perfect. Events should happen. So with this guy, he was so obsessed with perfectionism that most of the time he wouldn't let her cook because he felt like his cooking was better. And, but that was also part about when it was a party, it was also about getting attention. But he really felt like he could make a better burger. I mean, for God's sakes, he could make better pasta. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
The fourth one is high need for control. They always have a storyline in mind about what each character in their interaction should be saying and doing.
Yeah.
Okay? And when you deviate, they go ballistic.
Because the backing principle of this is they're putting on a show and they want control over the whole stage so that no one can see behind the curtain.
Well, exactly. And here's the interesting part. The last sentence of that description about being in control. You are simply a character in their internal play.
Yep.
Not a real person with your own thoughts and feelings. So it doesn't matter that you don't want to do this or you don't want to wear that. It doesn't matter. In their head, you should be wearing this. You should be doing that.
The reason you're there is to play a role.
Right. And, I'll tell you a quick story because that's what we like to do on our show because it points out things that people are like, oh, my God, I never thought of that. So I had a client several years ago, Lou. I probably mentioned it at some point in the show, but when I was working with her, I was separation and divorce coaching her because clearly he had moved to another state, took his money with him, and they didn't have kids, thank God, but he wasn't circling back. And so the writing was on the wall and she needed to talk to some attorneys. And so she was hoping he would circle back, but he just wasn't. And when I started to get to know the background of the marriage and things like that, this is the one thing that blew my mind. Now, remember, I know this was 2021. This was 6 or 7 years ago. It's not that long ago.
Right.
She's telling me that, one of the things that she kind of liked that she sort of missed is that he would buy her surprise gifts. And I'm like, that's great. Who doesn't like a surprise gift? Even if it's small, it's the thought, right? Oh, I love that Himalayan pink salt.
Yeah.
If my husband comes home with that, it's thoughtful, right? Because he didn't have to go get that.
Right.
But this one blew my mind. The thoughtful gifts which I thought was kind of odd because I've only dated really 2 men that did this. And looking back, they were odd ducks to begin with. Looking back, there was something odd about them, but this was just one of the many things that they did. So what do you think the gifts were?
I got no idea. Now you set it up as being kind of strange.
Right. It would be like a dress, like a nice dress from, like a nice dress, like,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know, just a nice dress, not like a casual dress to the beach, but like a nice dress. And then
for the character.
Yeah. And
Yep.
the play in his mind was, because he grew up in such a weird, old-fashioned, super wealthy picture, like a movie where you have like the great big, dark walnut paneled rooms.
Yeah.
Like in a castle or a mansion. He grew up in a house like that in Wellesley. And the dining room was like, the long table, like from King Arthur's table, right? It could sit like 15, 20 people.
Yep.
I mean, mine, it's like if you get out to 6, you're pushing the envelope,
Yeah.
And he grew up like this, and they would get dressed up. They would have to get dressed for dinner. And so he brought this tradition into his, 2008 wedding. And so he would buy her but not just, I'd like us to not wear blue jeans to sit down to dinner, which by the way, was kind of weird because it's just the two of them, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't Sunday dinner. It was every night.
Yeah. It's weird. Yeah.
It reminded me of like Valley of the Dolls or something, like, drug them out and put them in a dress and make sure they're wearing a nice apron, every night. And it was almost,
he bought dresses for her to wear to dinner.
Yep. Is that kind of weird? It reminds me of people that like dress up their dog.
Yeah.
On like a hourly basis. There's a weird psychosis there.
Yeah, that's disturbingly weird, actually.
Right. It's disturbingly weird. And the funny thing is, at first, she thought it was really lovely. Like, this is a really, like, I feel like she got sucked into, this is what rich people do. And, we didn't really do it unless it was Christmas, but hey, this is kind of a cool thing that the two of us are going to do. And I'm like, yeah, on a Wednesday night, if you've been working, you come home and then you make your dinner. No. The first thing I'm going to do is get out of my suit. Like, no way.
Yeah.
No way am I going to put a dress on. That's just freaking, it is disturbing, isn't it? But there's a narcissist right there, because it wouldn't even occur to him to like take the weekends off or make that be like Saturday night dinners. Like I might go along with that, but I sure as hell wouldn't go along with, it has to be in the dress I bought you. Right.
Yeah. Well, you got to, and you have to remember the context of Narcissus, though. The show that they put on, the context of it at the time when he bought her the dress might have looked loving and thoughtful, but it was obviously manipulative. And of course, with our outside perspective and with her perspective of time, it becomes manipulative to her. But in the moment, may not seem that way.
Right. Right. Well, and it's funny because she described it, when I said to her, wow, that's crazy. She's like, yeah, it got tiring. And I felt like saying, it's more than tiring. You should be like freaked out by it. Like,
yeah.
For all we know, he's dressing her up to look like mommy. I don't know.
I used to laugh at how I was raised by, you're raised by the TV couples of the time, and you're looking at Dick Van Dyke and Mary Tyler Moore, and she's got a dress on and pearls for dinner. When he comes home from work, it's like obviously
that's how she had to dress.
Yeah, and it's not realistic. And God, even in the '60s, when the show was the era it was representing, not every household was like that either. By the way, but you tend to get, it was through modeling, but he expected this as the norm. He expected this as a sign of love from you get dressed. You're having dinner with me, of course you should be dressed up.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think part of that could also stem from the fact that, in the olden days when mostly dads were going to work, they're dressed, they go to work, they're dressed in some kind of uniform or something typically, right? I mean, it may not be a suit, but it could be, their mechanic's outfit or something. And then they come home and they see their wife, like not dressed, and of course, if depression sets in, they may not even get out of their nightgown or their bathrobe. And remember, they came up with the whole concept, which I think is hilarious, within clothing and the era of probably the 50s and 60s, at some point they came up with like the house coat, which is really a weird thing. And you wouldn't be caught dead in a house coat now. But
yeah,
it's a house coat was a fancy way of saying nicer looking bathrobe. And it zipped up the front, and they were usually like cotton with, they might have a design on them or something. But that was a fancy way of saying, I'm not getting dressed because I'm cleaning my house, but I'm not going to wear my pajamas.
Yeah,
it's like a crazy thing.
Yeah, and he was brought up with the role model of a woman who probably provided all of those things for her husband.
Yep.
My job is to clean the house and look pretty when he comes home.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
that's what they modeled as his idea of a loving relationship.
Yeah. So those are the first 4 descriptions, common behaviors of a narcissist. The 5th one is lack of responsibility. Always my favorite one. That's in almost every narcissist.
Yep.
Blaming and deflecting.
Oh, that's their primary skill.
Right. It's a skill too. I'll tell you, I sort of suck at it because whenever I deflect, my husband's always like, yeah, we're not talking about that. I'm like, oh, darn it. You caught me.
That was my point, and I guess I was correcting myself because they're very good at it, but they're very good at it because they pick people who are susceptible to it.
Right.
The reason you and I aren't good at it is because
Right.
we date people who are susceptible to it.
Right.
People we would date or get married to would say, "What are you, nuts?"
Right.
But
Yeah.
because that person is the person they select wants to please, does not want to rock the boat, wants the relationship, and so they're very passive about this. They sort of take it, and they're not buying it all the time either. But they say, "Oh, it's just the way he is," Or
Right.
you get beaten in the submission. You learn that every time you bring up a problem, they're going to turn it around on you and make it your problem. And so at a certain point, you realize that that's not productive, and you just stop doing it.
Right. Right. And that's the sad part, right? People just give up.
Yep.
And then decades can pass. And, it's really hard to untangle the victim of a narcissist from the guilt and shame that they even stayed in it, that they put up with it,
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, wherever you are, if you've been with someone like that for 5 years or 30 years, you just have to be able to say to yourself, and I tell my clients this all the time, you have to get into this mindset of moving forward and tossing that away. Every time you find yourself saying, God, what an idiot I was, stop yourself right there. You have to say, you have to be thinking of something. So like with my clients, I'm like, maybe it takes an item. Okay. So they carry around one of these stress balls, right? These are the good ones, the heart ones. I say to them, because it's like, what do they call that? Remember what was the name of that shrink that took the rats and the mice and they put them in the thing and they shocked them every time?
Oh, I forget. Yeah.
Remember that? Yeah. So it's the same kind of thing. Every time you have a negative thought like that, I should have known, I should have done so, I should have left sooner. That's my favorite one. Take out your stress ball and squeeze it and say, and look at it, because you can't look at the stress ball. Like if you tried it right now, like take your pen and look at it and start reading, like mine has writing on it.
Yep.
You can't do that and think of something else, right? You can't, it's impossible. But if you're sitting in a chair like this in a dark room, feeling sorry for yourself, the flooding thoughts come right through you. Right?
It's useless, and where you have to go immediately is that you understand that they are very skilled at this. They're exceptionally skilled at this. They've been doing it all their lives. And by the way, you're selected because you're susceptible to it. And that's anytime you have that thought like that, you have to start to understand why you were susceptible to it. And the fact is, I'm guessing most people, if you talk about their relationship with a narcissist or someone on the spectrum, what they're going to tell you is, I knew it was wrong, but I wanted the relationship.
Right. I wanted the relationship. I gave myself up to be in a relationship. But is Cheryl on today? Has she written anything? Is she on?
No, I haven't seen Cheryl yet.
Okay. So Cheryl,
that's the answer to the question. Why did I wait so long? Why did I do it? Why did I put up with this? Because you wanted to stay in a relationship.
Because you wanted a relationship.
Yeah.
So Cheryl, who watches the show a lot, and she often asks questions or she'll post a comment, which is great, or she'll talk about her own, failed and failing marriage, pending divorce. I know her story, and part of it is honestly because she's in my divorce care group. I have to say to her, you have to change your words when the thoughts come in. Like it just depresses me when I think of the fact that I married someone who, is just so awful and so different from where he was. And I said, but remember, we looked at your past. So we looked at not just her not her last past, like 12 years ago, but when I unpacked with her, which is what I do with clients, by the way, I unpacked with her, tell me how you met him, tell me where you met him, etc. Right? So she met him at church. The pastor knew him. The pastor didn't see him as being a bad guy or anything like that. He saw him as a nice guy, right?
Yep.
He portrays himself as a nice guy. Over time, somehow they like started hanging out, I think, with other people. He'd be like, I don't know, at a gathering or something, and he'd be there too.
Yep.
Then over time they became friends, and like they'd go places together. So maybe, at this time of year, they'd go apple picking together. But during that grooming period, which is what I'm going to call it, because it's like you said, he picked her, he chose her, he was the spider with the spider web, he was building a web around her.
Yeah.
And I said, it's very important for you to realize it, because as soon as you realize that that's what happened, it's a freeing thing, because you don't have to feel so bad about yourself. It's like you need to change your wording every time you have a bad thought. You need to squeeze your stress ball and say, he chose me. He deceived me.
Yeah.
Like I shouldn't feel shame and guilt. I should feel anger.
Right.
I'm like, you should be angry that there are people walking around like that, victimize people. You're a victim, but you can turn that around to survive it and go forward. And I can't guarantee it won't happen again. I can't guarantee that there aren't other narcissists out there, but getting different, wiser people involved and getting out sooner. So she got out soon, but it could have been 6 months into the marriage. She could have said, you know what? Kick you to the curb. Like, this is not healthy behavior.
Here's one of the things that makes you basically susceptible. And it goes back to what you talk about. People don't understand that narcissism is a mental disorder.
It is.
Yep. And one of the things that makes you susceptible is one of the things that made me susceptible was assuming that there's a certain give and take, and there's a certain humanity in a relationship. There's a certain humanity in a person. And you can call it empathy if you want. It's probably a pretty good descriptor of it. Narcissists do not have empathy.
They don't.
They're totally devoid of empathy. And we go into our relationships with people assuming a certain level of empathy, and you act accordingly. And that's where the web starts to happen. Right. Because you're assuming the person that you're dealing with is acting with empathy when they're not. They don't have any.
Right. They don't.
Oftentimes maybe you've never encountered it before, or often you don't understand there are people out there who are empathy challenged. They have no empathy. They're not working with empathy. And you're just working on that assumption. And that's what gets you in trouble. The fact that you made that mistake of not recognizing that the person across from you is disordered and doesn't have any empathy, that's not a failing on your part.
Right.
That's you being human and assuming that the person you're dealing with has a certain human level of empathy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
It's not just empathy, but empathy is a pretty good label for what it is that they lack.
Right. The next common behavior is lack of boundaries. That's always a favorite of mine. Narcissists can't accurately see where they end and you begin. They're a lot like 2-year-olds. They believe that everything belongs to them. Everyone thinks and feels the same as they do.
Yep.
And everyone wants the same things that they do. And they're shocked and highly insulted. That's the key word, insulted. A narcissist will be insulted that you don't agree with them, right?
Right. Yep.
And like to actually be insulted, to be told no, I mean, it's just such a weird thing. Because you and I don't relate to that, because it's like, if your girlfriend or my husband said no to something, we'd be like, oh, no means, yeah, I don't want that, or no thanks. Maybe it's no thank you, but we wouldn't be insulted by no.
You have some empathy for their position. You understand their thought process. You don't agree with it, but you understand it.
Well, and we recognize that everybody has a right to say yes and no to stuff, right? So They don't really see that.
Yeah.
And because of that, the narcissist will go to great lengths to figure out how to get it through persistence, cajoling, demanding, rejecting, or pouting. That's my favorite one. Almost every client I've had who we can determine pretty much by this checklist that their spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend is a narcissist, almost always the pouting.
Yeah.
When they don't get their way and you said no to something like, no, I don't, I don't want to go shopping this afternoon. I'm exhausted. It's a Sunday and I just want to relax. The pouting is the worst. They pout, they purposely putter around like in the living room where you're trying to watch TV. Yeah. Very passive aggressive.
Oh, yeah.
Really horrible. And the next one we already described, but it's so interesting because it's the longest one in the book, which is lack of empathy. Everything else is a paragraph.
Yep.
This one is like 4. One is an extremely long paragraph.
Because it's a concept that normal people have trouble understanding it exists. I mean, it's hard to get in the mind of a narcissist. It's hard to get in the mind of someone who lacks empathy, because as humans, we all have empathy. It's just outside of our nature. We don't understand how people can think like this.
Right. And the closing paragraph says, their lack of empathy makes true relationships and emotional connection difficult or impossible. Yep. They just don't notice what anyone else is feeling, and they will not back down and validate it. They just don't. The next one is kind of an interesting one. It's emotional reasoning. You've probably made the mistake of trying to explain and use logic with the narcissist in your life so that they can understand the painful effect their behaviors have on you. And it kind of goes back to the empathy, right?
Yeah, because you assume once they know that you're hurting, they're going to change their behavior, or they're going to accommodate that, and they're not. Right.
And again, you have to recognize and remember that a narcissist, they make most of their decisions based on how they feel about something. So here's a good example. And I had a client who this happened to actually several months ago, where her husband, because he makes the money, he just went out and bought a third car so we could have a sports car. They just have to have that red sports car based entirely on how they feel driving it, not by whether it is a good choice to make for the family or for the budget.
Right.
So a lot of times they can afford it, but but we're saving up for college, right?
Yeah.
Or we both have a nice car. We don't need a third car. That's ridiculous. But in their mind, it's like, I did it because I want it. But the person married to the narcissist, I always say to my clients, I'm like, okay, well, not that you want to promote this, because God forbid they agree to it, but that's when you say, well, where's my sports car? Well, you don't have to drive an hour and a half to work. It's like, yeah, but you drive it, and then you're sitting in an office for 10 hours. So I actually could drive a sports car all day long.
I need this to enhance my show. I need this to enhance my self-image.
Right. And I want it.
I'm not thinking in those terms, but that's the upside of it. I want people to see me as this person who owns this type of sports car.
Right. If you get right down to it, why would someone have to have that, especially in the case of my client where they have two very nice, for all intents and purposes, cars.
Yeah.
The next one is interesting. Splitting. The narcissist personality is split. This is kind of what you talked about early on, actually. Lou the wingman.
Yeah.
Their personality is split into good and bad parts. And they also split everything in their relationships into good and bad. Any negative thoughts or behaviors blamed on you or other people, like your kids or your neighbors, whatever. Whereas they take credit for everything that is positive and good. So they split. They do split between good and bad, but bad, essentially, you have to remember, anything bad falls on you or your kids. The things that are good, they take credit for. Here's an interesting one. I don't think too many people would think about. Fear. The narcissist's entire life is motivated and energized by fear. So according to this, almost all of them will have this as one of the characteristics.
You know what they're afraid of? Being exposed. Being exposed. Yeah.
That's exactly what it said.
Yep.
Exactly. Also, they're constantly afraid of being ridiculed, rejected, or just plain wrong. They can't handle being wrong.
Right.
And it could be too that when they were kids, they were ridiculed. Maybe they were bullied as a kid. And so they go above and beyond to, control other people so that, so they're not bullied.
Right.
So they're not in the position of ever being considered wrong again. But it's a fear that's motivating them, which is very fascinating. That's to me, that's a real psych thing right there. That's crazy, right?
Yep.
So here's another one, which I wouldn't have thought of, just based on the overly, controlling and confident mannerisms of the narcissist that I've known. The other emotion that runs deep in a lot of them is anxiety, which maybe kind of goes with the fear.
Yep.
Anxiety, it's interesting, right? Anxiety is an ongoing, vague feeling that something bad is happening or about to happen. Some narcissists show their anxiety by talking constantly about the doom that is about to happen. So they over-obsess about something bad that's going to happen.
Right.
But others will hide it and repress their anxiety. But this is interesting. But most narcissists project their anxiety onto their closest loved ones. They're going to accuse you of being negative, unsupportive. This is my favorite one. Mentally ill.
Yep.
Not putting them first, not responding to their needs, or being selfish. And it's anxiety driven.
Right.
So, it's always fascinating that they're the ones that are like so messed up, and yet they're constantly accusing. That's why a lot of people, they stay in the marriage and stuff, because they just feel like they have to do better, because according to their spouse or their boyfriend, girlfriend, they're messing up on an hourly basis. And all the problems of the relationship are because we're the ones that are not doing things correctly.
And a lot of it goes back to empathy too, because they tap into your empathy, not having any. They're immune, but they make you feel like you're letting them down. And you don't know, having empathy, you don't want to let anybody down, especially your closest partner. So you keep trying harder and you keep trying harder before you understand the reality of the game that you're in.
Right. And
plus,
some of the other
narcissists build an image
right.
that they put out there, and their self-image is not very good. They don't like themselves. They understand who they are. They understand that they're frauds based on the image that they're putting out there. And their whole fear, their whole existence is based on someone not seeing behind the curtain and seeing past their little show that they put on here. They're trying to project an image. They protect that image to the death because they don't want people to understand who they really are.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So some of the other characteristics that they can have, and, pretty much often have I think most probably have more than 55%, but shame. They don't feel any guilt because they think they're always right, and they don't believe their behaviors really affect anybody else.
Right.
Inability to be truly intimate. Because of their inability to understand someone's feelings and their lack of empathy, they can't truly love or connect emotionally with other people.
Right.
The other one is they can't cooperate and be a team member. Yeah. How can you be a team member if you always think you're the one that's right?
Yeah.
I mean,
you can't be the I in team. Well, no, everything's about them and this image that they're projecting. So they can't be part of a team because, everything has to focus on them.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, they pick people who are willing to live in that relationship for at least a while.
Right. Right. And then at the end of this list of characteristics and traits, if you will, that you want to go through to really understand what these each mean. And if and I think I might have mentioned this last week, but at the end of the chapter in this book, she talks about what about sociopaths? Because a lot of people say, the stuff that he did was he's like a psychopath or a sociopath. So narcissists and sociopaths are not the same. It's often hard to tell the difference when you only look at outward behaviors. There's a big difference, however, when you look at their hidden vulnerabilities.
Yep.
Sociopaths pretty much have no emotional vulnerabilities. They are born without fear, anxiety, shame, guilt, or any empathy. They do not care about your feelings, even a little bit. A narcissist, on the other hand, they want to have a relationship, but they have some real disabilities in their capacity to respond with compassion and understanding.
Plus, they feed off what people are reflecting back to them. That's the most important thing to them. So they are very concerned about what you think and what you feel about them. Sociopath isn't. Sociopath's just, tearing a swath and, lighting things on fire. He doesn't care.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what they say here. So sociopaths do not have any desire for a relationship with you. Their goal is to get whatever it is you have that they want. So in other words, when a sociopath is going after a wealthy woman, okay, such as money, property, sex, attention, cooperation, without giving you anything in exchange, and then they move on, okay? A narcissist often keeps hanging on to the relationship with you even after you split up.
Yep.
Because they want that connection and continued attention, and they just can't stop needling you. But a sociopath will move on because they get what they want, and when they can't get it anymore, or like they're not getting the sex anymore, or you lost your fortune, they're out.
Yep. Narcissists need supply, and they will string you on even after the relationship again, taking negative attention if they can't get positive attention. Exactly. But they need supply, and they will never really let go of a supply.
Exactly. So if you're recovering from manipulation or abuse by a sociopath, you'll need more help than this book and this show can provide. I'll add that in. You have been severely abused, and you may need ongoing psychotherapy, deprogramming,
yes,
or intensive emotional care. However, this book can lead you in the right direction toward increasing your self-esteem and becoming more self-loving. Because at the end of the day, a lot of this is self-esteem.
Yes.
Right? Like, I'm going to look like a loser if I get a divorce.
Yep.
Right? Or I'm not going to look like a good mom if I tell my kids that I'm leaving.
Yeah, or even more core, this person was the closest person I've ever had in my life. I loved her. She adored me, and somehow I screwed it up. I wasn't good enough.
Right. And so it's important to move.
They want you to leave with.
Right. Right. So next week, we're going to talk about the next chapter, which is not, it's all about them and what a narcissist is. Next week, we're going to talk about, you're going to like this because you've already talked about it, but what about you?
Yeah. Why
the narcissist needs you to be a caretaker, and what those types of caretakers mean, because there's emotional caretakers.
Yep.
Are you generous in giving? There's all these different things that they need from you. So we're going to unpack, what is it about you that drew them in and what kept you there?
Which, by the way, brings us back to your point about dropping those feelings about blaming yourself for staying in the relationship or getting in the relationship or not leaving sooner, because why they latched onto was positive reasons. It was about your empathy. It was about your ability to love. It was about what you're capable of supplying. Those are all positive things that they just abused.
Right.
It's not your fault. They took your positive features and they just abused them and drained them.
Right. Yeah. And so I know we have to wrap up, but next week I'm going to go into more detail about something I wrote last night, which is, what are some of the characteristics that Coach Judith thinks are good for positive relationships? So I'm just there's like 8 or 9 of them. What makes somebody, a date worth keeping?
Yep.
Consistency. So they're predictable. They're good in the relationship. They're trustworthy. Second one is that they use the word we. So that's a good sign. They're clearly looking at future plans, calling, it's a we. The third one is silence feels okay. So it doesn't feel awkward when things are silent.
Mm-hmm.
Putting in an effort. You see that the other person is putting in an effort, because both people need to put an effort in. So you're not the only one paying for things. You're not the only one planning things, right?
Yep.
Next one is respecting your time alone. That's a big one. When someone is okay with you being alone and they're not trying to infringe on that, they understand that that's okay. Respecting boundaries. We'll talk about that. What is a boundary? What isn't a boundary? This is a really good one I thought of. The ability to say, I'm sorry. Okay, because someone that doesn't have empathy, just to dovetail into narcissism as well, but this would be with anyone you date. If they can't say they're sorry, that's a red flag. That isn't even a flashing yellow flag.
Right.
If they can't say they're sorry and fess up sooner than later,
right.
I mean, that's not a good sign. Because the only way that you're going to grow and thrive in your relationship is to have 2 people that can say they're sorry. The next one is no criticism. Okay, so there's 2 types of criticism. There's healthy criticism, where you're trying to just give them constructive criticism, right? Like, hey, if you checked your tires every time, you'd know that if the bike's going to make it or not, right? So, just a little thing like that. Like, hey, maybe we should check the pressure in our tires before we take a bike trip. Unhealthy is when it's critical, right? It's judgmental. If it feels judgy and it feels kind of disrespectful, then it is. If it looks like a duck, it's a duck. And we're going to talk about that a lot. The last one is that they show an interest in your goals. So what that means is that they have a genuine interest in helping you and supporting you. And hey, you know, they might even say, hey, look, I saw this class on Saturday. I know it's like Saturday morning, but if you wanted to be a yoga teacher, this one says Yoga 101, like maybe you'd like that, you know?
Yep.
But the person that always says to you, that's stupid. Why would you want to be a yoga teacher? Or, you know, why are you taking another class? That's ridiculous. That's just a waste of your time. You don't need any more.
Right.
That's not a supportive person.
No.
So we're going to talk about those next week. But, you know, stay strong, everybody. And if you know a narcissist, or even if you don't, the best thing you can do
Or if
is,
you know someone who's in a relationship with a narcissist.
right.
Yeah.
The best thing you can do is look at these archived shows and get them out to your friends and family on Facebook. Share these on Facebook, because you never know who is stuck in a narcissistic relationship. And honestly, we all know that people stay stuck in them because it's a web and they don't know how to get out, and they're embarrassed. And there's a lot of shame and guilt for the fact that they married this person or that they're dating this person, and they don't know how to get out of it. And so
even a non-diagnosed narcissist can have narcissistic tendencies, and those are painful and damaging dynamics in a relationship.
Right. So when you share these things, you never know what help you're offering to people that are out there in Facebook land.
All right.
So I think
Check
that's
out
it.
the library on Coach Judith on Facebook, and we'll see you next week.
That's right. Be well, be healthy, everybody. Take it easy.